Have you ever been judged unfairly based on your appearance or background? Share your story. The murmur of hundreds filled the school auditorium, excitable voices echoing off the high, scarred ceilings. Light spilled softly through the tall windows, catching dust motes swirling with careless grace. Aisha stood alone near the side, pulling her threadbare sweater tighter around her slight frame, the worn fabric sheathed around the contours of her arms a naive armor against the biting cold she felt from the stairs. Her homemade shoes rested firmly on the scuffed tiles, the craftsmanship apparent only to those who looked closely, but today they were marks of division, a glaring contrast to the polished sneakers and leather loafers that surrounded her. The soles, carefully patched with scraps of rubber, spoke of resilience and quiet defiance. But the crowd did not see strength. They saw something out of place, something to mock. The assembly broke into laughter, sharp and sudden, slicing through the vanilla air like shards of glass. Aisha's breath caught, her chest tightening as sharp, cruel eyes caught hers. The sound was a whip crack against her confidence, ripping away the fragile veil she had draped over her dreams. "Look at her shoes," a voice sneered nearby, dripping with disdain. "Do they even let her wear those?" another voice snickered. A group of privileged students clustered together, their faces a study in superficial amusement, their laughter a chorus of exclusion. The glimmer of a phone screen caught a shared image, a snapshot of Aisha's shoes, cruelly circulated among whispered taunts. She shifted uncomfortably, the weight of their scorn pressing in, a suffocating fog that blurred the edges of the room. The sharp click of her cards as she shuffled them hidden in her pocket did little to steady her spirit. Her heart thundered, a silent war beneath the polished surface. Her piercing green eyes flicked downward, tracing the seams of her shoes, each stitch telling a story of nights spent in quiet labor and days dreaming beyond the asphalt and cracked sidewalks of their neighborhood. "Hey, handmaid girl, why don't you just sit with the rest of us?" called one of the boys, his tone both mocking and challenging. Aisha's voice was an uncertain thread. I'm just waiting." The teacher, tall and imposing, stepped forward, casting a dismissive glance that was more a rule enforcer than a protector. "Let's keep moving. Focus," she commanded, her gaze icy as it swept over Aisha, dismissing her presence as easily as the flicker of a candle in the wind. The auditorium lights dimmed, the spotlight shifting to the stage where privilege and approval danced freely while Aisha remained tethered to the margins. The laughter echoed, a cruel refrain, as the camera panned to her face, a mixture of shame, defiance, and the faintest spark of unyielding hope hidden beneath. Outside, the sky darkened with gathering clouds, the first drops of an impending storm tapping gently against the window panes. The rain promised cleansing, renewal, but for now, it mirrored the torrent rising within Aisha's chest. She inhaled deeply, the cold air filling her lungs to steady a trembling resolve. His shoes were small, worn, and flawed to others, but to her, they were the foundation of a resilience no laughter could erode. And as the storm gathered strength overhead, so too did something fragile but fierce stir in the depths of her soul, a quiet promise that this dismissal was not the end, but the beginning. The soft patter of rain grew louder, a syncopated rhythm against the glass, framing Aisha's silhouette caught in the window's fading light, a solitary figure standing strong amid shadows that sought to define her. Her story was just unfolding. The laughter had faded, but its echo clung to the cold, sterile walls of the school auditorium like a persistent shadow. Aisha stood just beyond the circle of light, the murmur of her classmates' whispers wrapped around her, an invisible chain tightening with every passing heartbeat. Her homemade shoes, the same ones once a source of pride, now seemed burdensome, each stitch, every carefully crafted seam, a glaring beacon of difference amidst the sea of designer brands. She pressed her back against the rough brick of the corridor, its uneven surface grounding her in a moment that felt suspended between humiliation and silence. The sharp scent of mildew mixed uneasily with the faint sweetness of distant hallway blossoms, an ironic reminder of beauty hidden within decay. Her chest rose and fell, breaths shallow yet steady, the storm inside her warring against the quiet she sought. Her green eyes, usually a spark of defiance, flickered with the weight of an invisible wound. The glossy posters lining the hallway, champions of dreams and excellence, blurred as tears pooled behind eyelids she fought to keep dry. Voices replayed in her mind, their venom soaking into the walls, a cruel tapestry of judgment and exclusion. Why even try? A taunt that reverberated louder than the laughter. But Aisha swallowed the sting, pressing her palms into her jeans, fingertips digging in with a desperate intensity. The rhythm of her heart was a drumbeat of resilience, silently refusing to break. A faint rustle of fabric drew her gaze downward. Her shoe spatched, worn, but steadfast rested firmly beneath her. To others, they were odd. To her, they were a manifesto, a declaration of authenticity and strength forged through quiet determination. The soles, roughened by city streets and long nights, told stories of struggle unmarred by surrender. Outside, the skies wept soft whispers of rain, the droplets tapping gently against the cracked window panes, their cadence a lullaby for hope. The scent of wet asphalt and fresh earth seeped in a cleansing promise amidst the shadows. Aisha's breath steadied as the first raindrops kissed her skin, cool and renewing. The wetness was a baptism, a gentle reminder that even in moments of sorrow, renewal was poised to bloom. A figure approached silently, a teacher whose gaze no longer held judgment but a quiet, reluctant understanding. Their voice, low and measured, broke the heavy silence. Your strength isn't in how they see you, Aisha. It's in how you see yourself. Those words, fragile yet piercing, echoed deep within her. A whisper against a roaring storm. Aisha's shoulders lifted with a subtle nod, an ember of something fierce kindling beneath the weight of rejection, a vow unspoken but burning hot, to rise, to dance beyond their sight. As the rain traced gentle paths down the glass, blurring the stark confines of the hall, Aisha's eyes lifted skyward, drinking in the swelling light behind the storm. Each shimmer of brightness was a call to arms, a silent beat in the music of her own making. Her lips parted, breath-catching in a tentative exhale, a promise against the silence. The gathering storm outside was no longer just a symbol of turmoil but a herald of cleansing and rebirth. The path ahead was shrouded, uncertain, yet beneath the roar of the rain, a dance began, fragile and fierce, marking the first step of a journey none could have foreseen. And as the last echoes of laughter faded into the distance, Aisha stood tall, not unscathed, but unbroken, a silhouette framed by rain and resolve, ready to reclaim her story. The rain slid down the cracked window of Aisha's modest bedroom, tracing fingers of water that blurred the cold cityscape beyond. Sheets of gray cloud loomed heavy above the restless streets, muffling the distant hum of life but amplifying the quiet storm that brewed within her chest. In the dim light of evening, shadows pooled in corners, wrapping the room in a muted solitude where she could finally sit with the roaring tumult inside. Her fingers absent-mindedly traced the worn edges of her homemade shoes, resting neatly by the door-scuffed soles and hand-stitched seams that bore silent witness to battles fought in silence. Those shoes, once marks of difference and scorn, had begun to feel like talismans, emblems of all she was quietly becoming beneath the weight of rejection. She pulled her knees close to her chest, breath slow and deliberate, eyes fixed not on the window but on the fading light around her. Pain still pulsed like a relentless tide, the sting of laughter and exclusion from the assembly ringing like a ghost. Yet beneath that raw ache shimmered something new, a tentative spark of self-realization igniting in the depths where hope had scarcely dared to tread. Outside, the rain softened, the patter changing from harsh beat to gentle drizzle water, cleansing the grime of a weary city in a ritual of renewal. The night's chill seeped through the thin walls, mingling with the faint scent of damp earth and distant blossoms, reminders of resilience carpeting the urban wilderness. Aisha's eyes lifted toward the darkening heavens, twin orbs reflecting a dance of lightning far beyond the city, a fierce, beautiful storm that mirrored the tempest of her own spirit. In the wild, flickering light, the world seemed both immense and intimate, a vast stage where shadows and light intertwined in eternal struggle and fragile harmony. She reached slowly to the shelf where the faded photograph lay, a framed image of her mother dancing beneath sunlight and open sky, radiant and unburdened. The photograph spoke volumes of untold stories, strength inherited and love fought for in silence. A gentle knock on the door stirred her thoughts, a cautious, familiar presence. The figure of her younger brother framed in the doorway, his eyes full of quiet understanding, offered a small, steadfast smile without words. It was enough. Aisha inhaled deeply, a swell rising in her chest not unlike the rhythm she felt whenever music touched her skin, the beat that had once been muffled now dawning with vibrant resolve. Tomorrow, she whispered to herself, voice steady, tinged with fragile courage, I will dance my truth. As the candle flickered softly beside her, casting a warm glow against the dark, the rain outside slowed to a silken whisper, a lullaby for beginnings. The storm within her shifted, no longer a harbinger of defeat but a herald of possibility. Her silhouette stood in the tender light, framed by hope and the promise of days uncharted. And as the night released its final breath, Aisha closed her eyes not in surrender, but in preparation for the dance that would change everything. The humid air of late afternoon clung to the cracked sidewalks surrounding Grandview High, a low haze settling over the restless city as dusk began to claim the edges of the skyline. Aisha's breath misted in the cool air as she laced the worn strings of her homemade shoes, their rough leather scuffed from countless nights dancing beneath flickering streetlights. Her small apartment, cluttered yet cozy, hummed softly with the distant sounds of the neighborhood shouting children, the clatter of pots, and the low rumble of a train passing far below. The rhythmic tapping of rain against the window began, gentle at first, growing into a steady patter that intertwined with the faint pulse of distant music, the beat that had come to symbolize freedom for Aisha in a world often harsh and cruel. Inside the room, a battered mirror hung crookedly on the wall, reflecting the figure of a young girl whose worn sweatshirt and homemade shoes could not hide the fire burning in her bright eyes. The mirror was cracked, fractures spider-webbing like the obstacles she faced, yet within those broken pieces glimmered fragments of resilience. Tonight was her secret sanctuary, the moment when the city's chaos faded and her body could tell stories that words failed to capture. In this small refuge, she practiced moves learned from stolen videos and passing mentors, each step a brushstroke against the canvas of her dreams. Her phone buzzed softly, pulling her from the dance and rain symphony. A message lit the screen, an invitation, unexpected and weighty. Dance audition. Downtown theater. Tomorrow evening. A flutter of hope ignited, fragile yet vital against the quiet ache of uncertainty. Could this invitation be the first chink in the armor of judgment that surrounded her? Or was it another test, another door that might slam shut? The rain outside intensified, hammering against the panes like a pulse of cleansing urgency, as if the city itself urged her forward. Later, under the flickering glow of a street lamp, Aisha slipped through darkened alleys, her heart pounding in a rhythm that matched the distant thunder. Her path was uncharted, each step both a risk and a declaration. She thought of the faces that mocked her shoes, the pointed whispers that had become a soundtrack of her days, and the teacher whose dismissive glances cut deeper than knives. Yet even in the embrace of loneliness, her spirit stirred with quiet rebellion. Who decides my worth? She muttered under breath, voice firm despite the chill crossing her skin. A sudden sound startled her, a footstep behind, deliberate and slow. A shadow flickered in the periphery, a lingering presence that pulled her gaze sharply backward. She paused, breath held, heart thrumming a fierce warning. But the figure faded into the mist, leaving only the cold night and the relentless rain. Aisha tightened her grip on her worn shoes, the symbol of her heritage, strength, and authentic self. The night wrapped around her like a cloak, dark, uncertain, but charged with possibility. And beneath the storm's fury, a fragile hope beat steady. Her journey had begun. The rain had thickened to a steady downpour, washing over the streets of Aisha's neighborhood with relentless force. The wet asphalt shimmered under the streetlights, pools reflecting a fractured cityscape, one that mirrored the fractures within her own spirit. Sweat mingled with the cool droplets on her forehead as she practiced alone beneath the flickering glow of a lone street lamp, the rhythmic thump of her feet and the sharp snap of her movements cutting through the storm's roar. Her homemade shoes, toughened by every step she'd taken in this unforgiving world, gripped the cracked pavement beneath her. Each motion was a conversation, a defiance against the jeers, the whispers, the dismissive glances that marked her as less, as other. Yet, this dance wasn't just movement. It was liberation, an expression of a truth that could not be silenced. But tonight, the vulnerability of her secret was exposed. The sudden flash of a cell phone camera illuminated the dark alley, freezing her in a moment between fear and fury. A whisper of footsteps echoed closer, sharp and deliberate, the relentless presence of those who wished to see her fail, to mark her place beneath their world. "Can't keep hiding, dance girl," a derisive voice called out from the shadows, dripping with contempt. Aisha's heart escalated, pounding a fierce rhythm as she spun, twisting, searching for an escape in the confined labyrinth of steel fire escapes and stacked crates. Every breath was ragged, each inhale a desperate prayer for strength. Yet in the depths of that turmoil, a flicker of resilience alighted, a hunger that refused to be dimmed by fear. Her gaze caught the worn laces of her shoes, a symbol of all she had endured and all she could still become. She clenched her fists, feeling the rough leather as if drawing power from it. The storm around her mirrored the storm within, thunder rolling like a collective roar urging her onward. She summoned a moment's calm, planting her feet firmly and launching into a sequence of fluid, powerful movements, defiant and beautiful even under the watchful eyes of her adversaries. Her expression was fierce, a mix of pain, determination, and fragile hope. Time seemed to slow as a few passers-by paused, their faces softening, caught by the unguarded strength pouring from her dance and unspoken plea for recognition, acceptance, and understanding. She crashed to the slick pavement, breathless, her chest heaving beneath the threadbare jacket. A hush fell. Then distant footsteps retreated, swallowed by the rain. But the price was clear, a cruel message scrawled in graffiti on a nearby wall: "Stay in your lane." Aisha's gaze hardened, the sting of humiliation mingling with a defiant fire. Her voice, barely a whisper swallowed by the rain, vowed, "They don't define me." Far off, thunder rolled again as the storm swelled, but so did a burgeoning strength within her, a fragile spark kindled in the cold night. Her journey was no longer a secret shadow movement, it had become a battle cry beneath the tempest's roar. And as the rain washed the city clean, Aisha's silhouette, damp and determined, stood unwavering, a testament to the unyielding spirit rising against the storm. Aisha's footsteps echoed hollowly through the empty gymnasium, the vastness around her magnifying the quiet desperation swelling inside. Her breath rose in white puffs against the chill night air spilling through the cracked windows. Rain drizzled softly, tapping a mournful rhythm on the glass, a slow, steady cadence that mirrored the heaviness seeping into her bones. The worn homemade shoes felt heavier with each step, their patched soles telling stories of defiance against worlds stacked not in her favor. Tonight, the sanctuary of dance became a crucible of vulnerability, a secret realm threatened by discovery. Her fingers tightened around the folded letter she'd found hidden in her locker earlier that day, a cryptic invitation to a prestigious dance audition in the city. Hope mingled with fear, a fragile concoction as bitter as the cold biting at her skin. The fiery glow of the street lamp outside cast long shadows, elongating her silhouette into a solitary figure poised between worlds, the one that judged and cast aside, and the one she longed to step into fully. But even as her heart beat with possibility, it was shadowed by subtle betrayals: the teacher whose eyes lingered with disdain, the whispered snickers of her classmates, and the anonymous texts flooding her phone with veiled threats and cruel truths. The cost of ambition, whispered in the corners where darkness thrived. A sudden noise fractured the quiet, a gliding footstep, soft and deliberate. A shadow slipped through the broken doorway, the gleam of a smartphone in hand capturing her isolated practice in stolen images. Fear pricked at her nerves, swift and sharp. Whispers followed her, an insidious tide seeking to erode every shard of confidence with every cruel intent. Yet in that intensity, clarity bloomed, a painful, luminous awakening. Aisha realized the battle she faced was no longer only to prove her talent but to protect it fiercely against forces bent on diminishing her light. Her voice, barely a whisper, carried in the stillness, "If I fade, then they win." A breath of wind swirled into the gym, carrying the scent of wet earth and distant thunder, nature's own symphony of cleansing and power. The familiar wetness of rain soaked through the cracks in the roof, droplets falling softly upon the worn wooden floorboards like scattered jewels of hope. Her gaze rose to the ribbon of the sky stretching beyond the broken glass overhead, where the clouds broke to reveal a glimmer of stars, distant points of light unwavering against the cosmic dark. Aisha's pulse steadied, the trembling in her hands ebbing as a fierce resolve ignited. The homemade shoes, battered yet steadfast, anchored her firmly to who she was to become. But then, a sharp click echoed near the entrance, a door locking, sealing the precious solitude she'd clung to. The room seemed to close in, the shadows gathering as a figure materialized in the doorway, a teacher's cold eyes glittering with unreadable intent. "You really think you can escape what they know, Aisha?" The voice taunted, cruel and low. The rain intensified, drumming a violent cadence against the windows, a storm raging beyond and within. But Aisha stood tall, silhouetted against the flickering gym lights, the storm's fierce power echoing her reborn courage. Her voice, steady and unwavering, broke through the dark, "I'm not hiding anymore." And in that declaration, the thunder roared, a wild applause from the heavens, heralding the rise of a girl who refused to be unseen. The battle had just begun. The sky was a slate-gray abyss, heavy clouds pressing down like the weight of 1,000 whispered doubts. Outside the narrow window of her cramped bedroom, rain fell in jagged sheets, drumming relentlessly against the cracked glass. Each droplet struck with a sharpness that echoed the raw ache coursing through Aisha's chest, a relentless reminder that the world outside was as cold and unyielding as the storm. Aisha sat curled into a corner, her knees drawn tightly to her chest, the threadbare fabric of her sweater clinging damply to her arms. Her homemade shoes lay discarded nearby, patches peeling and soles worn thin, the delicate emblem of her resilience now a haunting symbol of vulnerability. The hazy streetlights outside cast a flickering glow that danced melancholy shadows across the peeling paint and bare floorboards. Her once vibrant and defiant emerald eyes were dulled to an abyss of exhaustion and despair. The echoes of laughter and jeers from the school assembly still rang cruelly in her ears, a taunting symphony that unraveled every strand of hope she had so carefully spun. The weight of rejection was a vice around her throat, suffocating, unyielding. In the suffocating silence of her room, every breath felt stolen, every heartbeat a hammering echo against the fragile walls of her resolve. The world outside the window was in chaos, the tempest mirroring the storm that raged inside her, torrents of grief, anger, and isolation crashing through the fragile vessel of her spirit. She reached out blindly, fingers trembling as they brushed against the torn pages of her notebook, the faded doodles and scribbled rhythms of early dream steps. These tiny fragments of her clandestine dance, her language of liberation, seemed distant and unreal now, shackled beneath the fog of despair. A sharp crack of thunder shattered the silence, the thunderous roar reverberating through the small room and piercing the quietude of her sorrow. The rain intensified, cascading from the eaves with renewed fury, as if nature itself sought to cleanse a world steeped in shadows. Her gaze lifted unseeing to the damp ceiling, tracing the faint pattern of a single water stain, a fragile, imperfect circle slowly expanding. It was a mirror to her unspooling world, beauty fragmented by relentless erosion. A whisper rasped from her lips, barely a sound over the storm's song. Who am I without their eyes? Without their voices? The question hung in the air, unanswered and profound, as silence reclaimed the room, thick, oppressive, and infinite. Outside the window, the city seemed to hold its breath, awash in the cold glow of street lamps blurred by the relentless rain. Inside, Aisha's world contracted into a space of shadows, cold and sharp, where hope flickered at the edge of extinction. Her body crumpled further into itself, a fragile silhouette swallowed by darkness and despair. The dance she once dreamed of, a flame of expression and freedom, now felt like a distant memory, smothered beneath layers of doubt. The rain's relentless percussion lulled the world into eerie stillness. In that battered quiet, Aisha's spirit teetered on the brink, ravaged and raw. And as the first shards of dawn struggled against the storm, so too did the fragile threads of her resolve begin to unravel, threatened by the cold and the cruelty. Her journey, once bright with promise, now stood at the edge of unraveling into shadows. The night stretched endlessly around Aisha, a vast void swallowing every ounce of light and hope she once clung to. The room, bare and cold, echoed with the faintest drip of water leaking from a cracked pipe, a singular sound that morphed into a haunting dirge for her unraveling world. Behind the closed curtains, the city lights blurred like distant stars, unreachable, indifferent. Aisha lay curled on the worn mattress of her modest bedroom, the threadbare blanket tangled beneath her, a shroud thick with despair. Her fingers, pale and trembling, clutched at the faded fabric of her sweater, each thread fraying like the fragile fibers of her resolve. Her curly hair, usually a crown of strength, fell in wild tangles, obscuring her face, hiding the tears that traced silent paths down soot-streaked cheeks. The glow from a solitary candle on the windowsill flickered weakly, casting fractured shadows that played across the cracked wall like ghostly fingers, embodying the fragmentation of her spirit. The worn soles of her homemade shoes rested under the beta, silent testament to battles fought in quiet defiance. Yet tonight, even those trusted talismans seemed distant, their protective aura dimmed by the suffocating weight of sorrow. Outside, the rain began anew, a gentle gust gathering into a relentless downpour. The rhythmic tapping against the glass was a cold lullaby, equal parts cleansing and cruel, washing away remnants of joy while echoing the hollow ache of abandonment. Her breath shuddered, the pulse in her throat a fragile thread stretched taut. A whisper emerged from cracked lips, half-choked and almost unreal. "Is this who I am now?" No answer came but the cold wind weaving through the eaves, a mournful breath in the silence. The room felt vast and suffocating, every corner a cavern of solitude. The tangible absence of warmth pressed into her skin, a chilling reminder that darkness embraced her with tight, unyielding fingers. A single tear fell, pooling on the cracked wood floor, its crystal clarity catching the candlelight, a solitary beacon in a sea of shadow. In the stillness, Aisha's gaze drifted upward to the fractured shadow of a mirror hanging askew on the wall. Its splintered glass fragmented her reflection into countless shards, none whole, each a broken piece of the girl imagined and the girl forgotten. Her voice, barely a breath, trembled quietly into the cold air, "I'm fading." The candle flickered violently, then steadied, casting a dim glow over the solitary tear, now still and shining. And in that silent, suffocating moment where time seemed to suspend, Aisha's world held its breath. The storm outside mirrored the tempest within, each wave of rain a relentless reminder of battles lost and the unbearable weight of solitude. The light dimmed further, shadows growing thick and soft around her, enveloping the room in an endless embrace of silence. And as the candle's flame guttered on the brink of extinguishment, so did the fragile veil between despair and surrender. The dawn was a reluctant visitor, barely brushing the horizon with a pale, tentative glow as Aisha lay curled on the edge of her narrow bed. The room was still, cloaked in shadows that clung to the corners like silent ghosts of the night's torment. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths, a storm of feelings trembling beneath the quiet surface: sorrow, anger, emptiness, and most painfully, doubt. Her gaze was fixed on the cracked windowpane, streaked with the remnants of last night's rain, each droplet a prism catching the faint early light. Outside, the world shimmered with the promise of renewal, but inside her, dissonance churned a dissonance that blurred the line between who she had been and who she might yet become. Her fingers reached unconsciously to the worn laces of her homemade shoes, lying quietly beneath the bed. Those shoes, humble and rugged, had been her silent allies, bearing the weight of every step, every triumph, every whispered dream. Yet tonight, they felt distant, symbols of a past that now lingered on the verge of slipping away. A soft creak from the hallway roused her senses. The door cracked open, and in the soft light, a familiar figure appeared, her younger brother, eyes wide with hesitant hope. He stepped quietly, as if afraid to disturb the fragile world she inhabited. Without words, he extended a small package, wrapped in an old, faded scarf. The corners were worn soft with use, the scent faintly reminiscent of their grandmother's garden, earthy roses and fresh rain. Aisha's fingers shook as she untied the fabric, revealing a small, delicate bracelet, each bead hand-painted, each charm crafted with care. It was a token of faith, a quiet ceremony between past and future, a whisper of unwavering love and belief. Her tearful smile was a fragile bridge across the chasm of despair, a muted acknowledgement that even in darkness, light could be found. The rain outside softened to a gentle murmur, the echo of cleansing and rebirth, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the curtains, bathing the room in soft amber hues. Aisha closed her eyes, pressing the bracelet to her heart, an emblem not just of strength but of belonging, of identity reclaimed beyond judgment or scorn. The dance had always been more than movement. It was a language of the soul, a rebellion whispered through motion. In this quiet revival, she found the spark to begin again. Her voice, barely above a breath, stirred the stillness, "I will rise." And as the morning unfolded, the fragile promise of renewal shimmered between the falling raindrops and the lingering shadows, an invitation to a future unwritten, resilience reborn, and a story waiting to be danced into being. The first light of dawn seeped softly through the thin curtains of Aisha's bedroom, casting a muted glow that bathed the worn walls in gentle warmth. The storm that had battered the city through the night had eased, leaving behind streets glistening with fresh rain and a sky stretched wide open, washed clear of shadows. The city hummed quietly below, a world both familiar and renewed, poised delicately between yesterday's struggles and tomorrow's promise. Aisha lay still beneath the threadbare blanket, eyes tracing the soft interplay of light and shadow on the ceiling. The chill had not yet lost its grip, but within her, a slow warmth was kindling, subtle yet stirring, like the fragile bloom of a long-awaited spring amid winter's retreat. The worn stitches of her homemade shoes peeked from beneath the bed, their rough edges softened in the early light. To any other eye, they were but humble cobblings desperately clinging to survival. But to Aisha, they symbolized her quiet defiance, the story of nights spent practicing alone, the artistry born from scarcity, the endurance woven into every step. Her fingers brushed lightly over the smooth curve of the pendant she wore, a small token gifted by her mother, its cool surface grounding and real amidst swirling emotions. It was both talisman and tether, a reminder of roots deep and dreams yet unfolding. From outside the window, the gentle tapping of feet converging along the empty street reached her, the voices muted and distant but unmistakably alive. Life stirred again, tenacity returned in whispered breaths and tentative footsteps. A small smile tugged at the corners of Aisha's lips, soft and uncertain yet charged with a fledgling hope. The storm's fury had not vanished without leaving scars, but the rain's promise of renewal lingered, resilient and unyielding. She drew a deep breath, the cool morning air filling her lungs with a momentous stillness, a pause pregnant with possibility. "Maybe," she whispered to the quiet room, "this is the first step." The room seemed to exhale, shadows retreating into corners as light claimed its place upon the walls. Outside, the distant clatter of a bus and the murmur of awakening voices blended into a symphony of mundane miracles, the echoes of ordinary lives and extraordinary courage. Aisha sat up slowly, the spring of resolve steadying beneath her. She pulled on her sweater, the fabric worn but comforting, and laced her shoes with deliberate care, each knot a silent vow to herself. In the mirror, her reflection was a study in contrasts, a young girl marked by hardship and hope, shadows and light woven together in a raw and beautiful tapestry. Her gaze lingered, searching beyond the surface for strength not yet fully realized, the resolve flickering like a candle flame against a cold wind. Then, from deep within, a quiet strength blossomed, fragile but fierce, a steady pull toward the woman she was becoming. Outside, the sky blushed with early light as the city breathed awake, poised on the cusp of new beginnings. Aisha stood, the soft patter of rain still fresh on the ground, and stepped forward into the day, into a world waiting, just beyond reach, ready to be claimed. And in that fragile dawn, amidst the blooms of possibility and traces of yesterday's storm, she glimpsed a future where shadows no longer dictated the story. The journey had only just begun, but hope, delicate, enduring, had taken root. The late afternoon sun spilled golden light across the cracked pavement as Aisha stood beneath the towering brick walls surrounding the community center. The warmth of the day bled into the shadows, cutting clear lines between light and shade, between the past that tried to hold her captive and the future she was beginning to claim. She flexed her fingers, calloused and strong from years of struggle, steady now with quiet resolve. Her homemade shoes, polished by sweat and grit, held firm against the uneven concrete. Each worn thread was a testament to battles fought in silence. Around her, the city hummed, a living organism pulsating with rise and fall, chance and consequence. Inside the large gymnasium, a gathering of young dancers warmed up, bodies stretching in fluid motions, limbs tracing arcs that spoke of liberty and dreams. Aisha took a measured breath and stepped forward, her entrance quiet but undeniably purposeful. Eyes turned, some curious, others sharp with skepticism. The privileged students who once cast her aside now looked on with an unreadable mix of surprise and challenge. Yet, the dance teacher, who had been an unyielding skeptic before, allowed a flicker of recognition to cross her face as Aisha approached. With a subtle nod, Aisha asked, "May I join?" Her voice was steady, layered with the tempered strength of someone who no longer asked permission but sought inclusion. The teacher hesitated, then gestured toward an open space. "Show me what you've got." Music swelled, filling the room with a pulse that matched the pounding of Aisha's heart. Every movement she crafted was a statement, a dance of courage carved from years of isolation and doubt. Her body spoke the language of liberation, sharp, graceful, raw. Her classmates watched, some faltering in their judgments as each step wove vulnerability into power. The room's warmth shifted. The cold walls reverberated with a new energy, a beginning of change. After the last note faded, Aisha stood breathless but unbowed. "I am more than what you think," she said simply, eyes locking with the teacher's. A rare smile softened the teacher's gaze. "You're exactly what this studio needs," she confessed quietly. The door to the gym creaked open, and through the crack a shadow lurked of the bullies, whose eyes narrowed sharply. Yet even they faltered, a flicker of unease flashing across their face as Aisha's quiet triumph challenged the status quo. Later, walking home beneath streets still glistening from a recent rain, Aisha's path crossed that of her tormentors again. But this time, instead of flinching, she held their gazes firmly, ownership burning in her look. "Why do you keep fighting?" a voice sneered. "For the light," she answered, voice calm but unwavering. Rain began to fall again, droplets soft at first, then steady, washing over the city, cleansing and renewing. Aisha lifted her face to the sky, rain mingling with tears she no longer tried to hide. The path was uncertain, the road ahead fraught with shadows. Yet in that cleansing rain, she felt a profound shift, a moment of awe washing through her soul, a realization that her strength was no longer hidden but radiant. Her homemade shoes bore her forward, each step a defiant anthem, echoing into the gathering dusk. And as the world around her shimmered with the promise of dawn, Aisha embraced the delicate but fierce pulse of transformation stirring within, renewed, unbroken, and unbound. The auditorium was drenched in silence, save for the distant murmur of the storm that had finally broken outside, rain cascading down the high windows like nature's own symphony of renewal. The stage beneath the dim spotlight was empty save for Aisha standing tall, her posture unyielding, her gaze steady. The fabric of her modest sweater caught the soft glow, but it was her presence indomitable and radiant that transformed the space. The crowd, once quick to dismiss, watched in tentative awe. Eyes that had sneered now smoked with recognition. The homemade shoes once scorned now whispered a tale of strength, each stitch a testament to resilience and authenticity. The rain outside echoed in the slow drip from the gutters, washing away bitterness as the storm clouds cleared. Aisha's breath was steady, calm, an unshakable anchor after a tempest of pain and doubt. Her natural curls, pulled back from her face, framed luminous eyes that shone with the quiet fire of justice reclaimed. She began to move, not just dance, but to embody every story, every struggle etched into the soles of those shoes and woven into her very being. Each step was bold, fluid, an expression of liberation born from hardship. The rhythm rippled around the room, sweeping away walls of judgment and suspicion, laying bare the raw beauty of courage and truth. The glow of the spotlight widened as she danced, filling the space with golden light that shimmered like dawn breaking through the darkest night. The flickering candle motif that had whispered hope throughout her journey seemed to flicker to life within every heartbeat, every pivot. In a moment suspended between time and breath, she paused at center stage. The silence enveloped her like a cloak. Her voice, soft but resolute, cut through the hush. I am not defined by where I come from, nor the judgments cast upon me. I am strength. I am truth. I am light. Her words rippled through the crowd, dissolving barriers built by fear and prejudice. Faces softened, nods of understanding blossomed, the first early seeds of change taking root amidst once barren ground. Flows of rainlight shifted as the heavy clouds outside parted finally, unveiling the silver glow of moonlight, a celestial witness to Aisha's transformation. Embracing the stillness, she felt the culmination of her journey, the shattering of doubts, the rising of her spirit, the reclamation of her story. Where there had been shadows now was clarity, where there had been silence, fierce purpose. Her gaze met the doorway, where once bullies lingered, now watching, no longer with scorn, but with a fragile respect born of witnessed truth. The dance concluded not with a grand finale, but with a quiet boa gesture of humility wrapped in unshakable confidence. She inhaled deeply, the radiant light and cleansing rain intertwined around her like a new skin. Her journey of hidden strength and redemption wasn't over, but she stood ready, calm, powerful, transformed. The music swelled once more, a pulse of hope and challenge, as Aisha stepped forward beyond the stage, poised to face both the bright horizon and lingering shadows with unwavering heart. And in her wake, the world held its breath, watching the dawn of a new story unfold. The early morning sun spilled soft, golden light over the city, igniting the rooftops and casting long shadows across the bustling streets. The air was filled with a gentle hush, a peaceful stillness that followed the storm of the past weeks, a storm that had tested and ultimately transformed her. Aisha, now standing on her small balcony, took in the quiet beauty of everything around her, a faint smile touching her lips as memories of her journey settled within. Her eyes lingered on the worn, homemade shoes, each stitch a story of survival, each patch a testament to resilience. They were no longer mere footwear but symbols of her authenticity and strength. Her blackened soles touched the earth with dignity. The rain had washed away a century's worth of doubt, cleansing her soul and leaving behind a clarity she had never known. This morning, a sense of atonement and peace settled deep inside her like the steady drip of water in a quiet fountain. She felt the weight of societal judgment, the dismissive looks, the sneers, the barriers she'd broken becoming part of a larger story of victory that she would carry forward. The streets below thrummed with life, children playing, vendors setting up market stalls, but in her heart, everything was hushed, waiting. Her fingers brushed over the framed newspaper clipping from that victorious dance, the headline glowing with her name, a symbol of perseverance. Behind her, the memory of the storm that once threatened to drown her was softened by Dawn's gentle embrace. She was no longer the girl hiding behind her modest clothes, nor the girl who danced in the shadows. She was reborn, rooted in unwavering truth. A deep breath filled her lungs, a quiet affirmation that her story, complex and raw, was now part of a larger tapestry of hope and renewal. The path ahead shimmered with possibility, illuminated by the lessons learned and the confidence forged in adversity. The storm had swept away walls of prejudice, revealing the brilliance of her authenticity. She looked to the horizon, where the sky met the city's skyline, an infinite canvas of promise. The clouds had parted, the sunlight stretching its warm fingers across her face, awakening her to a future she would shape not by apology but by action. With a gentle, almost imperceptible nod, Aisha closed her eyes in silent gratitude, embracing her newly discovered strength. The world, vast and vibrant, waited patiently, holding its breath for her next move. In that tranquil moment, a whisper of hope stirred, soft and persistent, signaling that her journey from shadows to light was only beginning. And the city, awakening beneath the dawn, seemed to echo her quiet affirmation: she was enough. More than enough. The horizon blushed with the soft glow of dawn, casting a gentle light over the sprawling cityscape, a tapestry of hope and renewal. Aisha stood on the balcony of her modest apartment, the morning air cool and crisp against her skin, her eyes reflecting the vast sky. Every ache and struggle of her journey had led to this moment, a quiet peace blooming within her, like a resilient flower pushing through cracks in concrete. Her gaze lingered on the familiar sights, the busy streets pulsing with life, the distant hum of laughter, the rhythm of daily existence, reminding her of her own power within this vibrant chaos. The homemade shoes she once saw as symbols of her resourcefulness now shimmered with new significance. They bore the trace of hardships faced and battles won, a testament to her strength. Her hands, calloused but steady, rested gently on the cool railing. In the distance, the city awakened further, light spilling over rooftops and casting long shadows that she had once feared, now illuminated by the dawn of her own awakening. The storm that once threatened to drown her in despair had passed, washed away by rain and resilience, leaving behind a trail of clarity. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. The tapestry of her life, the pain, the setbacks, the moments of triumph, crafted her into a vessel of unyielding hope. The facade of judgment and prejudice, once a mountain she believed insurmountable, had been chipped away, revealing the raw, authentic core that had always been there. Her heart swelled with gratitude, a silent prayer to the universe that she could finally forgive the past, their doubts, her fears, those who dismissed her worth. The past was a shadow cast long behind her. Her future shimmered like the dawn, silent and promising. In that stillness, she turned from the horizon inward, embracing the deep truth: she was enough. More than enough. Her journey was not over, but her spirit was free, unburdened by the chains of societal judgment. With a calm, determined smile, she stepped back inside her apartment, the light in her eyes brighter than ever. Her fingertips brushed softly over the worn fabric of her shirt and spoke an acknowledgement that her strength had always been there. Waiting. Descending the stairs, she paused briefly to glance into the simple mirror on her wall. Her reflection was no longer just a girl defined by struggle, but a woman reborn whole, fierce, and ready to face whatever came next. The shadows faded, replaced by the warm glow of dawn, a symbol of hope awakening within her. The city's vibrant pulse continued its rhythm, and she moved forward into the day, carrying the quiet but powerful truth that true victory begins from within and from acceptance of oneself. The journey was ongoing, but her heart beat with newfound strength, poised to write her own story, one of resilience, redemption, and unwavering hope. A pristine dawn broke over the city, bathing streets in a palette of soft pinks and luminous golds. The air was thick with quiet expectancy, a gentle breeze whispering promises of renewal and hope. High above, the sky stretched endlessly, a canvas awaiting the strokes of a new chapter. Beneath this peaceful expanse, the city's pulse had slowed, as if holding its breath in reverence. At the heart of it all, Aisha stood on the grand balcony of the newly restored community center, her silhouette etched against the vastness, a symbol of resilience and transformation. Her natural, curly hair bathed in the golden light, forming a halo that radiated quiet strength. Her modest clothing, once a barrier, now shimmered softly, a testament to dignity reclaimed. In her hands, she held a small, worn clother handmade shoes, those patches of hope and hard work, and gazed out over the neighborhood. The streets hummed with life. Children laughing in the distance, vendors opening their booths, elders exchanging stories. Every detail reflected a city that had weathered storms, healed wounds, and embraced its true beauty. Around her, the remnants of old shadows faded, they were replaced by vibrant colors, fresh beginnings, and the laughter of communities united. Her journey from rejection to recognition, from silence to song, wove into the fabric of the city's awakening. Her eyes, now calm and radiant, captured the symphony of renewal, a dance of light and hope that had finally broken through the darkness. The familiar symbol-worn shoes rested on the balcony railing, catching the first sunbeams, reminding her of every step she'd taken, every obstacle she'd transformed into strength. Those patches, once symbols of her resourcefulness and resilience, now gleamed with a quiet serenity, markers of a story that refused to be broken. Aisha turned her face upward, breathing in the crisp morning air, a gentle affirmation of her journey's end and the beginning of something greater. The storm that once threatened to drown her had passed, carried away by winds of change, leaving behind clear skies and the soft glow of hope. In the silence that followed, a single bird took flight, its wings catching the sunlight in a dance of freedom. The city, the neighborhood, and her own heart all now in harmony, a testament to the power of inner strength and unyielding faith. As the camera pulled back, lingering on her peaceful silhouette against the expanding horizon, the scene faded into a serene tableau, a timeless jewel of hope, patience, and quiet victory. The world paused for just a moment, holding the silent promise that her story, and the stories of all who had struggled, would continue to thrive, unspoken yet eternal, like dawn itself. How would you have responded in her shoes? Share your thoughts.